Donald Trump says he's directing his government to reopen and expand Alcatraz, the notorious former prison on the California island. After flying back to the White House in the presidential helicopter, Mr. Trump said that for too long America had been beset by vicious, repeat criminal offenders, while judges were detaining increasing numbers of illegal immigrants. The prison was closed in 1963, and Alcatraz Island currently is operated as a tourist site.
Where did you get the idea for reopening Alcatraz?
Just an idea I've had, and I guess because the judges, so many of these radicalized judges, they want to have trials for every single, think of it, every single person that's in our country illegally, that came in illegally. That would mean millions of trials, and it's just so ridiculous what's happening. And it's long been a symbol, Alcatraz, of whatever it is. I mean, it's a sad symbol, but it's a symbol of law and order. And, it's got quite a history, frankly. Yeah. So I think we're going to do that, and we're looking at it right now.
Donald Trump. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from California by the chief Republican strategist, Errol Morkoc. Errol, thank you very much indeed for joining us. So first of all, just remind us of the notoriety of Alcatraz. I mean, it's probably America's most infamous prison, isn't it?
I think it's infamous, but also infamous kind of in the sense that it's been romanticized in a way. And that's why there are so many tours there. That's why it's such a tourist attraction. It's kind of bizarre. You would admit, you come to visit a city and, oh, come see our prison. I mean, I've seen that in a few cities around the world, but it's always an island prison. So it creates a tourist destination. And the fact that nobody was supposed to be able to escape from Alcatraz, it's surrounded by, stormy waters with great white sharks and various complications. And then 3 men actually did manage to escape, and they became sort of legendary. And the prison has its legendary background. But I think that's sort of what brings us to the situation at hand. That is a place that used to represent law and order. The mainland in San Francisco, about an hour from where I'm sitting right now, I couldn't park my car in downtown San Francisco without the windows being broken. I wouldn't feel safe taking my wife to walk in the street in San Francisco after hours. It's a very dangerous, unhappy place currently, and it's comical that the prison that used to be that they shut down now is something that's actually probably very well needed for the city, and a talisman to law and order. I think that's where Donald Trump is coming with on this new idea.
And just to mention, I mean, it's had some very notorious inmates, such as Al Capone and Machine Gun Kelly. And as you mentioned, it's a very harsh place. I mean, is it practical to reopen it and reinstate it as a prison where criminals will be sent?
It certainly is practical from a builder's capacity. I mean, it's an outdated prison in the same sense. If you go to the V&A waterfront in Cape Town, you can find the outdated prison turned into a Marriott there. So it's certainly something that would need complete renovations, probably not to the standards of the Marriott Corporation, but certainly would need to be something that's Donald Trump is trying to create, I think, a deterrent to crime. Certainly the cost of the crime in San Francisco alone would pay for the cost of refurbishing this prison, which would be a one-time cost. And this would be a place where we would probably be putting high-profile inmates in the same vein as Al Capone or various other famous criminals as a deterrent. We want to make sure that criminals see that they will be put in a very unhappy place, removed from the public. And keep in mind, in New York, they have Rikers Island. So the idea of putting prisoners on an island is actually not a bad idea. And certainly in this situation, you have the full backing of the federal government to do so. We have a lack of federal beds. And frankly, personally, a lot of people find that it's a tourist trap to be distasteful. When I was a student, they used to go there and protest the fact that it was being used for tourism. So everybody has a lot of opinions about it. But in the end, its core functionality can be restored. It'll be slightly expensive, but certainly not to the cost of the detriment of the crime that has plagued specifically San Francisco, a city that I grew up around and I sadly don't feel safe in anymore. So I think that's the direction it's going to go. It's going to be kind of an interesting process, but it's something that Donald Trump brings to the table, that asymmetrical perspective, and it just makes a lot of common sense.
Well, I mean, let's just stay with that issue of the cost, because it doesn't seem like the kind of idea that Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency would have endorsed. I mean, because the reason Alcatraz was closed in the 1960s was that it was outmoded then. So one imagines it's going to take a heck of a lot of money to reinstate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it cost about 3 times as much as any federal prison to operate because of its water location. So all the goods need to be brought in by ship, and it's inconvenient and slow. In this case, it's not a place either that has the volume to hold like a substantial amount of people. This is very much a design to be a mechanism of let's say deterrence. It's certainly not something that's going to house tens of thousands of people. It's going to be for the worst offenders, the people who we can't get out of the country right away, but they're in the process, they're in their due process of being sent back to wherever they came from. And I think it's going to be something that the cost, again, it's a lot if you take it away in one block. But if you were to take the cost of the crime in San Francisco, which is billions and billions and billions of dollars, and that's not even discussing the lost revenue, the detraction on property values, the amount of businesses and people fleeing the city. I mean, that all adds up. We're in the tens of billions of dollars. So the cost of reopening this at a couple $100 million, I'm sure it'll ruffle some feathers for the Doge absolutists. But in the end, it's a small cost for, I think, an optical deterrent and something that is underutilized piece of federal, let's go, penitentiary equipment. And I think that they can find a way to make it valuable to the American people. If we can get the crime reduced in San Francisco, we can offset the cost of the prison. But I do concede that it is a more expensive prison and geographic location to run.
Well, I mean, beyond what you were just saying, I mean, we understand that the US federal prison as a whole is down about 25% from its peak population in 2013. So there are apparently a lot of empty beds in the US Federal Bureau of Prisons. So it's not clear, is it, that a new federal penitentiary is necessary?
Well, the necessity of it, I think, again, comes to the deterrence factor. This is a talisman prison. This is supposed to inspire fear in the same way that if you're told you're going to Sing Sing or you're told you're going to Rikers Island and you're a criminal, you know that's the end of the line. So I think that there are perhaps some federal beds that are open, but are they as romantic and notorious as the ones that are going to be opened up there for, let's say, cartel leaders or gangsters or well documented criminals? I don't think so. So again, I think this is much more on the show of force side of things rather than the hardcore budget line item side of things. As far as the federal penitentiaries, I'm sure they have the capacity to hold the people, but perhaps this is a new strategy to again be a deterrent. And if San Francisco can clean up the streets, there'll be no cost to the taxpayer on the back end.
But I mean, Errol, when you're in solitary confinement, you're in a cell for 23 hours a day. Does it really matter whether you're in sort of Texas or Colorado or California? It's all the same from the inside, isn't it? I mean, it's is the thought that you're going to Alcatraz rather than, let's say, Leavenworth, I mean, scare somebody?
Well, we actually find that the criminals aren't afraid of prison. That's one of the interesting facts in crime data, but they are afraid of certain types of prison. Now, we're not trying to create, I mean, keep in mind the federal penitentiary system is very brutal and very unclean and very unsafe, and it's not something that is actually a very good representation of U.S. Democracy in a lot of respects. There's a lot of problems with the federal penitentiary system. So maybe a new facility, something that could be built at the same standards as we see in those new facilities in El Salvador. I think it would strike fear into people. I think it would remind them that you are being removed from our society. You are persona non grata to the point we don't even want you on our mainland. And it sends a message to young people that if you become a criminal, you are going to be basically like Napoleon, put on an island all by yourself. Now, will the deterrence be enough? Maybe, maybe not. But it's something that Donald Trump is willing to do, and I think it's something that his supporters are willing to back him on, especially when you consider the cost of the crime that is impacting the very city that it's off the island again. If that wasn't the case, there'd be a better argument. But if it helps with the crime there, it'll help with the total value of California, and it'll be a net positive.
I understand there's a place called the ADX in Florence, Colorado, which is a super max prison, which is higher than maximum security. And the ADX is where they send people convicted of terrorism, such as the World Trade Center bombers and Timothy McVeigh, drug cartel members like El Chapo. And the ADX is nowhere near full to capacity, and there are spaces for dangerous criminals, and there's no worry that they can escape. So, I mean, we're still wondering whether reopening Alcatraz is a practical necessity.
I wouldn't say it's a practical necessity as much as it's a new avenue for deterrence and crime fighting. Obviously, we have 20 million people who've come in here illegally who are, by the letter of the law, criminals, and most of them are non-violent people or not the worst people, but they have broken the law. So it might end up that, you know, it's more prudent to put the extreme mass criminals in the supermax and to maybe use Alcatraz as a place to hold people during their pretrial detention or during their deportation process. It's not exactly clear which type of criminal we're aiming to host there. Whether I think it would be a good deterrent for high profile criminals, but you make a very good, strong point about the supermax prisons and whatnot. So I think Donald Trump, is just looking for new avenues. It's something that certainly plays to the law and order side of his base, people who, like myself here in California, who are very frustrated by the crime. So anybody who comes up with a new idea or something to do with crime, I think is going to at least get some attention and get some press time. And maybe that's what Donald Trump is doing, getting a little bit of press, getting a little bit of attention, but he's still putting himself front and center as the law and order president, as the president who's here to fight crime on all fronts, and making use of the federal facility that's sitting there as a sort of very weird homage to a past prison, maybe is something that could be reused. But it certainly is fair to say that it's not financially or necessarily prudent, but it's a new strategy, and it's something that we're going to get behind the president and support, because there doesn't seem to be very much downside, especially if you, again, are able to reduce the crime in San Francisco and offset the cost. Then that's really all we need to do. We're looking to break even on it, if anything, and I think Donald Trump and the Federal Bureau of Prisons will know better how to do this as they approach it and do some studies on the best way to use it. But I don't think it's going to be a negative. It's not going to be a detraction for the American government to have more beds to host illegal criminals or legal criminals, whatever they might be, as weird as that sounds. I think it's not going to be the end all be all for crime, but it's certainly something that I think is going to go in the right direction and something that the president supports, and therefore we all kind of are going to get behind him on this one, because there's no downside to do so.
Errol, thanks very much indeed. Errol Morkoc is the chief Republican strategist. He was talking to me on the line there from California.